Hey guys, Forever Fangirl here. So, MyStreet Season 6 is coming back, which is very exciting. But before that happens, I wanted to make a theory video kind of talking about some of the hints and clues that Jason and Jess have left for us during this hiatus and also before Season 6 came out. And I knew this was going to be way too long to put at the beginning of a reaction video, so here's a whole video of me talking about theories and stuff that I probably looked into way too much. Specifically, I want to look at all the hints and clues that kind of relate to the Celestial Canon and the people who were building it. So obviously, the most information we have about these people is the entry that was hidden in the description that I read out in one of my trailer reactions, and a more recent one that was hidden in a picture that Jason tweeted. I'm assuming that these two entries are for some kind of record, whether that be for like a scientific report or for just a personal journal. Also, as the second entry isn't signed, I'm just going to assume that both are written by Dem, who kind of signed off the first entry. And on a quick side note, I also reckon that Dem's people live on the island that Starlight has now been built on, because it is mentioned that some people are kind of exploring some sort of ruins, and also there's that room in episode 7 which Holla is guiding. I'm gonna try and deconstruct these two entries piece by piece and break it down and kind of talk about what I think each part means. So let's start at the beginning. The first entry starts with 10 until midnight, April 27th, 332 RS. And the second entry starts with 5 until midnight, October 16th, 338 RS. So obviously it's very easy to identify that 10 and 5 until midnight are times of day, and that April 27th and October 16th are dates. Also, just quickly mentioning that if I'm looking down here, I have my laptop there with all my notes so that I don't get mixed up. So Americans write the date in the order of month, day, year, which personally I think is really weird because, you know, day, month, year makes so much more sense. But okay, sure, you do you Americans, I'm not gonna judge. But because of this, I think that RS could be an abbreviation like, you know, AD and BC and C and BCE, and that 332 and 338 are actually years. So Dem could be documenting the time and date at the beginning of each of her entries. If this is the case, I'm curious to what RS actually stands for. The only thing I could really think of is reaching safety. Maybe the Zeid or Zeid that she mentions are an enemy that they have escaped before. Regardless, if 338 and 332 are actually years, that would mean that these two entries are written 6 years apart. At the end of her first entry, Dem writes 10 years left. I'm assuming this means that there's some kind of deadline or maybe a doomsday coming up in 10 years' time, possibly relating to the Zeid. And if this is true, that means by the time she's writing her second entry, there's only 4 years left until whatever's going to happen. So now let's talk some more about the Zeid. Dem writes, "One more Zeid lights up the night sky. So much closer than it was before." Dem's first entry makes it very clear quite quickly that the Zeid are bad. But what exactly is a Zeid? Well, Zeid is referred to as an it, so it's probably not another tribe or clan of humans. Considering the fact it is referred to as an it, my first thought was maybe it's an object. The Zeid is said to be seen in the night sky, so I presume it's something from space, maybe like a meteor. It would certainly fit in with the next line. "Everyone left has devoted all their efforts into the Celestial Canon, a device engineered to stop Zeid before it makes contact with the surface." The term celestial is defined as positioned in or relating to the sky or outer space as observed in astronomy, or alternatively, belonging or relating to heaven. Because of this, it's very likely that the Zeid came from or is coming from space. But what if it's not an object? What if it's actually an alien species? Dem says that she and Mia have taken a different path. If we cannot stop Zeid's destruction, then we must find a way to outlast it, to survive it. Both a meteor or an alien species could fit as a destructive force that could potentially destroy Dem's people. So moving on, in episode 7 we meet Hollow, who is mentioned in Dem's second entry. We also learn that Michael has an interest in the machine in the room that Hollow is guarding, and that he intends to use it for something. At first, I thought this machine was the Celestial Canon, and I still think it's a possibility. Let's say for a moment that this this is the case, because it's still a very valid theory. If this machine is the canon, then we need to pay close attention to some of the dialogue Holler has, because he specifically states to Michael, "Your intent is to use this machine, and I will not let that happen again." Holler specifically says that he won't let anyone use the machine again, which, if this is the canon, implies that it has been used before. However, Dem writes in her first entry that her people's efforts are in vain. There is no possible energy source that could power the device. So we'd have to assume that Dem and Holler's people at some point found an energy source that sufficiently powered the device at some point after she wrote this first entry. The questions that would remain, though, are whether the canon did what it was originally built to do, and what exactly Michael would want to access it for. But what if this is wrong? What if this actually isn't the Celestial Canon and something entirely different? Dem finishes her first entry with, "We have found what we were looking for. It is only a matter of time until we have a breakthrough. All we had to do was look into ourselves. This is it. I'm sure of it." This is somewhat baffling when it's looked at on its own, but with the added information of the second entry, we can start to draw some conclusions. In Dem's second entry, she writes, "We needed to test the prototype. We needed to test the prototype. Why did I let her?" Credit to Galaxy, by the way, who found the message in the picture. This prototype could be related to what Dem talked about in her first entry. And if I'm correct, and 332RS and 338RS are both years, then that means that it's taken Dem and Mia 6 years to have a breakthrough and then put together this prototype. However, whatever this prototype is must have failed, as Dem continues to write, "It was her decision, but I could have stopped her. I should have." From this, we know that the prototype was obviously dangerous, but Mia went ahead with it anyway. Whether the situation was dire and they needed to test the prototype in order to make the final product, or Mia was simply just eager to test out what they'd been working on, we don't know. Now let's go back to episode 7. I'd like to present an alternate theory regarding the machine found in the room, because whilst it could be the Celestial Canon, it could also be this prototype that Dem mentions, which I personally think at this point in time makes much more sense. First of all, it is never confirmed in the episode that it is the Celestial Canon we see. The only person to give it some form of name is Holler, and he refers to it as a machine. Secondly, if this is the prototype, it would line up with Dem's first entry where she said there was no sufficient energy source to power the cannon. Thirdly, if this machine is the prototype, then it explains why it took 6 years to make, because it's massive. And finally, we know from Dem's second entry that Holler had some sort of association with Dem and Mia. And I'll go into more detail about that later, but perhaps once he found out what this prototype did to Mia, he swore that he wouldn't let anyone else use it again because he knew how dangerous it was. So let's talk about what this prototype actually did to Mia. Dem continues with, "And now she's gone. All that is left is a small flame that stands on the platform." I think this is what intrigued me most about this entry. See, earlier in the year, these two pictures were posted on Jess and Jason's Instagram pages. These symbols, especially the colored one, look a lot like a flame, as does the symbol that we saw in all of the thumbnails of the trailers for season 6. The flame in these pictures could all be drawings of the small flame that Dem writes of. But what exactly is it? Well, to me, it seems very likely that this prototype has transformed Mia into this flame, because in her first entry, Dem says in order to find the solution to outlast Zeid, all they had to do was look inside themselves. So does that mean that this flame is Mia's soul or life essence? Maybe she's still alive, just in a different form. And if that's the case, perhaps the prototype did exactly what Mia and Dem wanted, just not in the way they expected. They wanted to create a way for them to outlast Zeid, so perhaps in this form they could. And if Dem realized this, maybe she ended up using the prototype on herself. Hence why there's two flames in one of these pictures. This could also tie in with a more recent hint that was on Jess's Twitter. This picture was posted, and I found a really interesting theory by a Twitter user named My Life is a Mess, honestly same, that read the following. And back in Aphmau's year, when Lucinda's book got stolen, she mentioned that the spell book had lots of research on how to turn a person's soul into a stone. And in this picture, the characters I mentioned might have been turned into stones. What intrigued me the most about this was the whole souls into stones thing. Because to be perfectly honest, I'd totally forgotten about that detail. And it got me wondering, we now know that the book probably belongs to Michael. And if he has an interest in this research, research on turning people's souls into stones, and this machine in episode 7 is actually the prototype, which can turn people into flames, perhaps that could mean that Michael wants to gain access to this machine in order to further his research. But why would he want to do such a thing? Well, in my reaction to episode 6 of Angel's Fall, I pointed out how Michael and Terry could possibly be sharing the same body. A bit like the Jekyll and Hyde story. Perhaps Michael wants to turn Terry's soul into a stone so he has complete control over his body. I don't know, it's a possibility. To be honest, there's no real way of knowing what the Flame's purpose is at this point in time, because we just don't have enough information. I mean, that also goes for the machine that we saw in season 7. We just don't have enough information at the moment to know for sure. However, I'm not done yet. Remember how I said I'd talk about the association between Dem, Holla, and Mia? Well, here we go. Dem finishes her second entry with the following. Holla asked me where she was. I don't know how to face him. I don't know what to do. He is asleep and I am broken. Mia, I can't do this alone. This got me thinking, what exactly is the relationship between these three people? I mean, are they friends, siblings? It's obvious that at least Dem and Mia are close because they've been working on this prototype together. But we never learn the ages of the three when these entries were written, so we don't really have anything to go off in that respect. All we know is that Holla is extremely, if not centuries old by the time that Michael finds the rune that he's guarding. However, there's a couple of clues that I haven't touched on yet that might answer this question. Coming back to these Instagram pictures, I'd like to focus on the captions. The first was captioned, "Justify the means," and the second had a coded message, which when decoded read, "I gave the life of our daughter to save the rest of our world." There's a YouTube video I found explaining how that was decoded, so I'll link that in the description if you'd like to check it out. Now, I did see a theory that these captions could reference Alina from Diaries, which we now know is a possibility because we found out in last year's Christmas special, Her Wish, that MCD and MyStreet exist as parallel universes. As good of a theory as that is, though, I didn't feel that quite added up, because first of all, if Alina were to show up at some point in season 6, then why would Aaron and Afmal not recognize her in the Christmas special, which was quite clearly set after season 6? And secondly, I saw very recently a reply Jason wrote to a tweet asking about what was happening with MCD. The person asked if Diaries would be continuing, and he replied saying, "To be honest, I'm not sure if it will at this point. MCD is in a bit of a mess at the moment. Inflated stories, filler arcs, delays, hiatuses, production quality concerns, change in writers. It is a mess. It doesn't mean we don't want to, just we're not sure what the best course of action is." If Jess and Jason are experiencing all these troubles with the MCD storyline at the moment, then I somehow doubt that they're going to bring that universe further into the MyStreet universe. I mean, the caption does read "Our World," not "the world." So that does insinuate that whoever's writing or saying this quote knows that there is more than one world. And whilst that could mean worlds as in universes, it could also mean worlds as in planets. And as I stated before, I'm pretty sure that the Zeid are an alien species, which means Dem, Holla, and Mia's people would most likely address the Earth as our world, instead of the one and only world. But the caption also says, "I gave the life of our daughter." And because of this, I believe that this quote is being said by Dem, and that Dem and Holla are Mia's parents. And I do actually have some evidence as such to back this up. First of all, the captions would fit into the context. Dem could be trying to justify the means to herself or Holla of letting Mia test the prototype by convincing herself that the life of her daughter was given to save her people. Secondly, in Dem's entry, she says that Holla asked where Mia was. If they truly are a family, then it would make sense. Holla would want to know where his daughter was, and the first person he would ask would logically be Mia's mother. Additionally, Dem states that she doesn't know how to face Holla after the incident, which would also fit as not only has Dem allowed such a terrible thing to happen, but to her own daughter. She would know how much it would crush Holler and would be scared at how he would react. And of course she'd feel ashamed of what she'd done. Of course, this would also make sense if they were simply close friends, but there's one final line that makes me believe that they are truly a family. He is asleep and I am broken. If Dem and Holler are Mia's parents, they'd probably be sharing a bed to sleep. We know this second entry is written at 5 until midnight, so it wouldn't be out of place for Dem to be writing this entry in, for example, a journal in bed whilst Holler is asleep beside her. Honestly, to me, it just makes so much more sense. So many things click into place if this is true, including why Holler would guard what is possibly the prototype for so many years, to prevent anyone else from going through the grief that he and Dem did. And that's it. I did leave out a few things that could tie into this theory, such as the scribble scene in the book in episode 6, and how Travis might be linked to Michael's motives. Because I haven't formed full theories regarding those two topics, and to be honest, this is probably way too long as it is, so yeah, I'm gonna stop now. And besides, I could be on the completely wrong track here. Like, for example, Dem can also be a male name as well as a female name, so that's one thing that could be completely wrong right off the bat. I know there's a few other hints and clues that have come out that I didn't mention here, but they didn't seem to be directly related to what I was kind of talking about in this video, so I may briefly mention my thoughts on them at the beginning of my next reaction, which will be for episode 8 this weekend. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Feel free to leave a like and a comment below and share any theories that you may have about these hints and clues or for the upcoming second half of the season. You can subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see my future videos, and of course, I will see you all next time. Bye!